Watergate. So there we go. All right, let's bring these down for focus on everything. All right, in June 1972, 5 men are arrested in Washington's Watergate building. What looks like a third-rate burglary attempt on the headquarters of the Democratic National Committee induces journalists Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein of the Washington Post to start a thorough investigation. Over the following 2 years, they discover the 5 men were directed from within the White House itself to spy on political opponents. As a consequence, in 1974, President Richard Nixon resigns from office to avoid impeachment. So, and I'll just read the object of the game here from the rule book. It says, in Watergate, one player assumes the role of a newspaper editor. That's me. Hi, y'all. While the other embodies the Nixon administration, each with a unique set of cards. So we have Madam President on the other side of the table. To win, the Nixon administration must build up enough momentum to make it to the end of the turn. Whereas the editor must gather enough evidence to connect the two informants directly to the president. So we have informants around there and the president and various pieces of evidence in between. Of course, the administration will do all in its power to smother that evidence. Can the secret source known as Deep Throat tip the scales? A thrilling race against time begins. So what you guys are looking at here on the main board is, obviously, we have a picture of Nixon in the middle, and then we have the various informants around the outside here, and the actual informant tiles are over here on the left-hand side of the board. Then in between are 3 different colors of evidence, which these tiles all represent various colors of evidence, be it yellow, green, or blue. And they all represent different things. So the blue represent Nixon's re-election campaign, the yellow represent the Watergate complex and the ground plans for it, and the green represent transcripts of the Nixon White House tapes themselves. Then over on the right-hand side of the actual board is the research track. Now there's a 0 space that's kind of covered up there, which is a neutral space. Then we have Nixon's side, and then we have the editor's side over here. Then off board, we have momentum tokens. I guess I should mention we have 1 momentum token on the board itself, as well as an initiative token. And there are 3 randomly chosen from the bag evidence tokens that only Nixon is privy to as to what colors those represent or what colors those are. Then off the board, we have our momentum cards, 1 for the editor, 1 for Nixon themselves, as well as 5 spaces for momentum markers as they get claimed by the various sides. Then we have the initiative card. One side is going to be drawing 5 cards, whereas the other side is going to be drawing 4 cards. Then we have a handy dandy little end of round overview or player aid, which is going to be useful. And then each of us have our own deck of cards. So we have the editor deck of cards and we have Nixon's deck of cards over there. The aforementioned bag of evidence tiles, as you can see here. Then the actual informants here, and the earlier mentioned momentum tokens. Now, the game itself, how do you play? Well, the game itself is played over an indeterminate number of rounds. And each of those rounds is going to follow the same 3 phases. We have an initial phase, which essentially is building up our hand of cards and putting out the evidence tokens. Then a card phase, which is the meat of the game, where we're actually going to be playing our hand of 5 cards, alternating turns. And then an evaluation phase, basically figuring out who got each of the various tokens over here on the right-hand side of the board. The game ends essentially one of 2 ways. There is a third way that it can end. If you're Nixon, you want the game to end by claiming the 5th momentum token. The game ends immediately when Nixon claims their 5th token. For the editors, we win if we have 2 of these informants out here around the board, so Baldwin over here, there, and we have a chain of these evidence tokens, which I'm actually going to go ahead and turn face up here. If we have a chain of evidence tokens that goes back to Nixon between two of the different informants. The game also can end is during the evaluation phase, if when we're trying to put out a momentum token, there are none left to put out, Nixon immediately wins as if he had made it, or in our case, she had made it to the end of their term. Okay, so that's how the game ends. Now let's go over how you actually play. So the initial phase is very simple. Both players are going to draw cards, either 5 cards or 4 cards, and the initiative will probably change hands as the game goes along, so you're going to draw whatever is on your side. So you're going to draw those cards into your hand. Then Nixon is going to secretly, randomly draw 3 of these tiles out of the bag, look at them, and turn them face down. Okay? So we're going to turn these face down like so that we act like we don't know what these are for our examples. That is the initial phase. Then the card phase. So if you're familiar with any kind of multi-use card or Twilight Struggle-esque game, this game is going to be familiar to you. Command point type thing, action up here, or an event down here. So each card is divided into essentially 3 different parts. You have the value part, which is going to be this part in the top left-hand corner, or the event part, which is going to be this down here. And then the third space or bit of the card is going to be a little bit of flavor text down here in italics, which again, pretty standard across all games. Now, when you play a card, whoever has the initiative is going to play their card first. When they play their card, they're going to play it for one of 2 reasons. Either to do the value part of the card or the event. We'll start with talking about the event. The event, you must do everything that it says if you can. If you can't, that's okay, but you cannot choose to not do some part of the event. You either do it all or you do none of it. So there are a few different types of cards. Now on the bottom, we have the editor cards, and on the top, we have Nixon's cards, just a few examples of each. Now the events are events. As you can see, the events are pretty much the same. What they do is different, but the actual mechanisms for the events are the same. And then in the editor deck, there are journalist cards, and in the president's deck are conspirator cards. Also work kind of similar to one another mechanically. So an event, there are a couple of different options. There is your standard event here, which it says, do something that has to do with the main tracks out here, or putting out tiles, or doing various things that getting these informants out here on the board, etc., etc. So that's kind of what your standard event is going to be. Then there are recruit events, or ones that have requirements on them. So this says the picture of Woods must be in the potential informant supply. The informant supply being over here, and wouldn't you know that Woods is actually right there, so she's there, so I would meet that requirement. Then do whatever it says down below. And then finally, there are reaction events, which, think of them if you've played any kind of CCG or whatever, they're interrupts or they're counters or whatever. Oh, somebody's going to do something. Oh, nope, play this when it's not your turn to counter what it is they're going to do. And all the information is listed right on there. Now, you'll notice that some of these cards also have this down at the bottom, which says remove the card from the game. Literally, tear it up and throw it away. No, I'm kidding. Just put it back into the box or move it off to the side. It's out of the game. It does not go into your discard pile. Whereas this one over here, you'll notice, does not have that, so that would go into your discard pile. Easy enough, right? Same with up here. Now, one of Jess's cards here, or Nixon's cards as it were, says remove this card from the game or remove a conspirator from your hand from the game. So you would do this in lieu of getting rid of that card so that this card would go into your discard pile. So any questions about the events?
Nope.
All right. So moving on now to the value part of the card, which is this top left corner of the card. Now, as you can see, there are various colors of evidence that are out there, as well as markers on them. And some of them may have a universal wild symbol, which means any color of evidence of your choice. Now, when you choose to do either the value or the event, when you play the card, you announce what you're doing. So if you're going to do it for the event, things are a little bit different. Whereas the event, say, hey, I'm going to do the event, and you carry it out. Whereas, let's say I were to play this Rosemary Woods card here, and we'll go ahead and move this one out here so you guys can follow along. So if I played this card out here, and I said, I want to move a green evidence 3 spaces towards me on the track, I would ask Nixon, so Madam President, are any of these 3 of the 3 tiles, are they green? So she would then look at them and then decide, and I'll be honest, I can't remember if they are. So these are secret, and she actually has a choice to reveal one of those 2. It's her choice. So she says, yep, there is one, and move it 3 spaces towards me on my side. Easy enough. Okay? Or, in lieu of doing that, I could choose to move one of the 2 markers 3 spaces on my side. So that would be as simple as that, or that. You cannot mix and match. However, I can't do like 2 and 1, or say green 1 and that 2. It's all or one on one thing. And the reason it specifically has to be green, because that's what it's, if I'm going for evidence, it would be green. So if I do so, when one of these tiles gets moved, whether it's to my side or to Nixon's side, it must get revealed first. Only when it's here and hasn't been touched is it secret to half of us. Nixon obviously knows. So once that happens, if Jess were to then play a card into her tableau and she says, hey, I'm going to move one here instead of playing it for the event, she could tug of war this back 2 spaces as it shows there. She could move one of these 2, or she could choose to move one of those. But if she does choose to move one of those, before you move it, you have to reveal it. So she says, I'm going to move this piece of evidence over to my side like that. Is that clear? Does that make sense?
Yes.
That is for the value part of the card. So now we are most of the way home on how to play Watergate. So after we have done so, if at any point anything makes it to the 5 spot on either side, that side claims whatever that is, be it a piece of evidence, a momentum token, or the initiative token. So if it's the momentum token, and that gets pushed all the way to there, immediately claims it and puts it on the lowest number on your card. Okay, which now Nixon is 20% of the way to winning the game. If it goes onto mine, awesome, it goes there, etc., etc. Now, when it goes onto this space, if you were the editor side, there may be some sort of special little bonus that you get. You read it aloud and you immediately do what it says. If it's the initiative marker that makes it all the way to the end, you immediately move that off to the side, and then at the end of the round, you're going to actually claim the, you immediately claim the initiative when you do so. Okay? Any questions on those 2 tokens?
Nope.
When a piece of evidence, however, makes it to the end of either of our 2 tracks, when it makes it to my side, I then get to place it out here onto the board. And again, remember the goal of the game, if you're the editor, is to trace a path between Nixon and some of the informants out here with face-up evidence. So this being a blue or green, meaning I can place on any of the green or any of the blue spaces. So for whatever reason, maybe I choose to place it right there, easy enough. If Jess makes it onto her side, she gets to do the exact similar, or the exact same, with one change. This being a yellow one can only go over here on the yellow, but hers goes face down, which blocks that space. Now I have cards in my deck which will either flip these or remove them, and same with hers, etc. So again, it's a constant tug of war, and just because these are out here doesn't mean they stay out there. So that is the second phase, which is the meat of the game. Now, then we go into the evaluation phase, which is very simple. Return any neutral evidence tokens to the bag. So this wasn't moved, so it would immediately go back into the bag. Even if it were tug of war between us, if it ended up here, it still goes back into the bag, whether it's face up or face down. Then whoever has the initiative token claims the initiative. So if this were, say, over on that side, then Nixon would become the first player and draw more cards there. Easy enough, right?
Yes.
And then this will reset there. If it's at the 0 space, it flips to whoever didn't have the initiative at the beginning, during that last turn, okay? The momentum token, on the other hand, will either go back if nobody claimed it, or if it's on one of our tracks, it will then go as aforementioned earlier. Then, after all of that, we're going to replace the initiative token here. We're going to put another momentum token out here on the board, and then any evidence markers that are out here on our sides then get placed out on the board just as if they had made the 5 spot, but this goes with whoever has initiative at that moment. Face up or face down, depending on whether you're Nixon or whether you're the editors. Keep doing this, rinse and repeat until Nixon has 5 momentum tokens, 2 paths are completed, or when you go to put a momentum token, there aren't any, and whichever is the case, that respective player will win the game. And that, folks, is how you play Watergate. Any questions?
Nope.
Anything in the peanut gallery? I don't see anything, no. So we're going to go ahead and gather up our cards, and if you will, you want me to shuffle your deck?
No.
Okay, you got it. All right.
I learned how to shuffle.
That's true. So we have those need to go back in. Place your bets now. Over under on Glory to Rome's, we're going to set it 2.5 because I have a feeling that Jess crushes me and she doesn't have to cuss me much. So there's that.
We shall see. There were some comments that Nixon's easier to understand, so that while the game, they were saying, is really balanced, getting started with Nixon is easier.
Is easier? Okay, that makes, because you're trying to get momentum tokens,
yeah,
right?
it's really easy to get that, whereas your 2...
right. There's a lot more steps involved there. The only thing that I need to check is, I start with the initiative. There, Jess, if you will put these back into or I'll put them back into the bag. And then if you will draw, we will get started. I will bring the cameras up in the chat. And here we go.